Hello and welcome to Christ Lutheran Church's video looking at the first petition of the Lord's Prayer. So we are now getting into the substance of the Lord's Prayer. Last time we looked at the address, just referring to God and talking about our relationship with God that allows for us to pray. But now we get into the actual things that we're praying for. That's what a petition is. A petition is one thing that you are praying for, one prayer item, you might call it. Here is what the Lord's Prayer looks like. There's the whole thing. And we're not going to study the whole thing in this one video, but just notice that there's a lot here. And we might think, well, why should I really care about this prayer? And come on, just care about it. I mean, Jesus prayed this prayer. He taught us to pray it. He thought it was so important, so we should care about it. Get over yourself with thinking that this isn't important. Of course it is. And we get into the first petition of the prayer, and it's hallowed be your name. And we think, I don't know what this means. I'm really confused on it, so maybe I shouldn't care. Get over it. Jesus taught it to us, so we should pray it. But also, this video will explain what hallowed be your name means, because that involves some things that we don't normally say. There's actually two things in this petition that need to be explained. First is the reference to the word hallowed, and then the other reference is to God's name. So we need to explain both of those things. Let's start with the second one. Hallowed be your name. Why hallow, whatever that means, why hallow God's name instead of God himself? Well, that's an interesting question. And it requires us to understand the culture of the people who were first reading the Bible. Now, in Bible times, your name meant something different than it means now. Usually nowadays, when someone gets a name, it's because the name sounds really nice. And we don't think so much about the meaning of the name. For instance, my first name is Garrett. And do you know what the name Garrett means? Oh, it's pretty cool. Garrett means spear carrier. I think that's really cool, spear carrier. However, I don't think I've ever picked up a spear in my whole life. So this meaning for the name Garrett, it doesn't actually resonate with who I am. It doesn't connect with who I am. But in Bible times, your name often did connect to who you were. For instance, this is a really neat passage. This is my favorite example of names lining up with the person that the name is connected with. It's in Genesis 25. It's when Jacob and Esau, two twin boys, were born. When the time came for her, their mother, Rebekah, when the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment, so they named him Esau. Esau means red in Hebrew, the original language this is written in. And then after this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. And Jacob means grasper of the heel, or it might just mean heel. And so these two twin boys are named for what was going on when they were first born. Esau came out red. Jacob came out grabbing a heel. And so these names are connected to them. Well, that's how God wants us to think about his name, that his name actually tells us a lot about him. There are so many names that God is given in the Bible, not just God, but also the Lord, Lord Almighty, the Holy One of Israel. There's all of these names, and they're packed with meaning. So when you think about God's name, you're actually supposed to be bringing to your mind all these qualities about God. That he is powerful and loving and faithful. So when we say, hallowed be your name, it's not like the name, the letters of it spelled out are so important. What's important is the meaning behind it. And then we get to the other part of this petition, which is the word hallowed. I bet you've never used the word hallowing, hallowed, in normal conversation in your life. What does it mean for something to be hallowed? It's the same as the word sanctified, which sometimes we say is to be set apart. You can think of it like a trophy. Let's say you had a trophy in your home, or a trophy case in your home, where there are some awards that you've been given that you set apart. You put it on like a special mantle or a special shelf, and so you don't put other things right next to it. You don't keep your clothes right next to it, or use dishes right next to it. The trophy is set apart. It's on its own, and we want it to stand out on its own. This is a special thing, different than other items that I might have. This is what it means for something to be hallowed. It's set apart. I think another good word for it, other than set apart, would be the word prized. We want God's name to be prized, so that when people think about God, they think this is a very important person. This is a very important person that should be important for me too. In other words, we want God to be famous. It's our desire that God would be known, that people would understand who God is, that we would understand better who God is. That's what we're getting at when we say, hallowed be your name. We want the person that God is, his qualities, to become famous. I love how the prophet Habakkuk talks about this in chapter 3. We don't refer to the prophet Habakkuk often enough. Here it is in Habakkuk 3, verse 2. He writes, "Lord, I have heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds, Lord. Repeat them in our day. In our time, make them known." You see, Habakkuk knew that God had taken care of his people so many times in the past, and Habakkuk wanted God to keep doing that. Make your fame something that is known again, because you continue to help us, God. Habakkuk was asking for God's name to be hallowed. God, show up and do good things. Make yourself famous. So we ask God to do that. We say, hallowed be your name, God. May your qualities and who you are be something that people appreciate. That's what hallowed be your name is getting at. It's about the fame of God that we care so much about, because he cares so much about us. All right, here is your home activity. Read Exodus 20, verse 7, just one verse. It's the second commandment from the list of God's 10 commandments. So Exodus 20, verse 7. And then here's the question for following up with that reading. How can we honor both the first petition, hallowed be your name, and the second commandment at the same time? How can we honor both at the same time? That's all for now. God bless.